right, welcome back to the Think Like a Teacher podcast. Today, our guest is Calvin Barnum, the second, coming at us from American Fork High School. Super
Yes, sir.
excited to have you here. Just fill us in a little bit. What are the kind of the things you're up to? What do you teach?
Yeah, so I teach entrepreneurship, marketing, business classes, a couple different versions of marketing, all things CTE and business. So I'm really big into project based. And so we
Mhm.
spend a lot of time doing what we're talking about. So the entrepreneurship classes become entrepreneurs and the marketing classes become marketers. And I am a little bit anti scenario. So instead of talking about what that might look like, we actually work with current companies and current projects. And we have a lot of business partners in the industry. And then also they can work on their own projects, either their own entrepreneurship or their own interests in marketing.
Oh, that's awesome. So how long have you been using that kind of teaching style of just doing? Has it been the whole time doing rather than like scenario type teaching?
I think I've gotten slowly more and more away from scenario. I know I always wanted to apply it and look at real things. There's this moment where I was teaching junior high at Frontier Middle School, and I said, we were talking about how we'd do a marketing campaign. I said, well, in the real world, we'd hire a film crew. And I chastised myself. I heard myself saying it like, this is the real world. This is their real world. And we were talking about a real topic. It was how to actually show what tenacity looks like as a junior high kid. And
Mm.
the idea that they had was when you go up to bat and swing at a ball and you miss, no one makes fun of you. Do you keep swinging or not? And then the kid that wrote it was actually writing from his own personal point of view because he wasn't an athlete. So I got some money approved from admin and we hired a film crew and we filmed this really cool PSA. And I ended up winning a bunch of awards and we sent some kids to New York to collect the prize. And I went to Vermont to collect another prize, all based on trying to keep things real because it's real for them.
Huh. That's
It was cool.
awesome.
Yeah.
And so that's been since you were like middle school. So it's just kind of spearheaded, grew into that. Because on LinkedIn, I see you post a lot of stuff that your capstone students are up to. So how big has this kind of application type of teaching gone?
Pretty big. So a while back, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we started in entrepreneurship having a little fake market at the school where they could sell whatever they're working on. And I always thought it'd be cool if we had an actual school store, not a store in the school, but someplace you could actually get to when you weren't a captive audience, like on Main Street, USA. Like, what
Hmm.
if that was the store? And so I thought it'd always be fun to rent a mall store. The mall didn't agree with me until they got a new employee. And the new employee, I said the magic words. It took about 2 years to work on it. And I said, we just want to run an event. And that was their job. They were an event coordinator. And they
Hmm.
stopped talking about it like a store and they started talking about it like an event. And that was about 3 or 4 years ago. We had our first Christmas store. And
Oh,
then we
wow.
had another one in May. And we've invited everyone for free across the state, and it keeps getting bigger. Last year, we needed to lease out the Expo Center up in South Salt Lake. So it was like
Oh,
hundreds of students coming to it. We found out that getting bigger wasn't making it better. So we're now going to break it into smaller chunks, and we've been working with colleges. They all want to do it. So we're going to host this December in at UVU. And then we're going to
oh,
have another
wow.
one that we start over in Salt Lake. And it's big. The students do real things and they actually already were cool before we met them. Lots of the students are
Yeah.
already doing really cool things. So this generation gets, I don't know, I think every generation gets a bad rap, but this generation is treated like they're not good and they're actually pretty impressive.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Each year, I get surprised by my students. I teach advanced bio classes and anat and phys, and year after year, there's kids that are at our technical campus, JTech, that are in my anatomy class, and like, oh yeah, what are you excited about anatomy? I'm like, well, I'm already a CNA. I'm doing my medical tech class. I'm working at these hospitals. I'm like, well, do you want to teach? I mean,
Like,
it sounds like you're just here for fun. They're like, yeah, totally. I want to be a doctor. And so this is a door I have to go through. And so, yeah, I am very with you on that our kids are super capable.
Yeah.
and definitely need the right environment to show us that they're capable. And it sounds like that's like your bread and butter is just
Love
giving
it.
them these opportunities to do what they already do.
I think
Cool.
one of the important things I learned about project based learning that I was doing wrong at first is trying to save everybody. And it's
Mm,
okay if they
okay.
screw up, and it's okay if they make a mistake, and it's okay if one of their ideas doesn't work, because that is what all of us go through. We've all we've all made a lesson plan that bombed, and we learned
Yeah.
why it bombed, and then we changed it. So true project based learning has to have an element of besides just failing, just an element of they can choose how it looks and they can choose what it looks like, and if it doesn't work out, that's actually a really great learning tool, which entrepreneurs
Right.
use all the time.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of the talks that I listen to about entrepreneurship and things is really like, yeah, you just got to fail a lot and be okay with failing a lot. And I think that's just the way that our culture as teachers probably should go outside of the business world. Let's say it's a math teacher or a history teacher, like, oh, yeah, you didn't do it the first time. Let's figure out how to fix the problem and learn the skill, learn this task.
Right.
Cool.
I like I
So
like
do you find,
asking.
oh, go for it.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say I like comparing it to skateboarders and dancers a lot. Every dancer has fallen
Yeah.
over, and every skateboarder has celebrated some horrible broken limb while they try to learn a cool trick.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
they don't apologize for getting beat up.
Right. And it's after you get beat up, what's the next choice that you make?
Right.
Cool. So it makes me wonder now, like, as I guess I would say like a general ed classroom teacher. I teach core classes, science. I do some project based stuff, but when I do, I kind of find myself being a little overwhelmed by the variety of different things. So, how would you suggest managing? I'm imagining your students are doing totally different things since they're starting their own businesses and running them. So, how do you manage things like grading or timelines or like rubrics, things like that?
Well, the cool thing is the principles stay the same. What is marketing and what is creative thought doesn't change based on where they end up with that conversation. So whatever the principles are that I'm trying to cover in that unit, those are the constant, and that's what we're going to look at. Did they engage with the core principle? If they chose to take that to a let's make society a better place or let's sell a product place, it's still the same conversation. I imagine it's the same in the core subjects. There are certain principles that have various applications. So I would
Yeah,
focus on the principles and let them have some autonomy on how that connects to them. And if they want to connect with, I can't give examples in your own curriculum,
sure.
but the way that they take that as close to what's going to happen for reality would be the most engaging. They're, whatever is the next likely place they're going to work on something in your curriculum would be the first place I would go.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So, and that's something that I've kind of talked with other teachers that want to do projects, or even when we look at um, collaboration between like content teams. So, for example, performing arts or something like that, where you have band and you have choir and you have dance and you have drama. All of those kind of standards are an umbrella that apply in different aspects, and so we can collaborate and guide and do projects in that way. Um,
Agreed.
okay, yeah, cool. So with your classes being kind of unique project based classes, what is your methodology for the start and the end? Because I know, like me, you have pretty long block periods. So, what does
Right.
a typical day in Calvin's class look like?
I don't know where I heard it. And I can't quote the right people, but chunking. I've heard chunking defined as either
Yeah,
putting things together or taking them apart. And I don't teach a 90-minute lesson ever. No one wants a 90-minute lesson. So I usually aim for three phases of class, and that can look different ways. I try to start right when class is supposed to start because I hate wasting their time. I think it's rude. And so if they have a slow intro to class, I think that's saying something about how we feel about their time. So I usually have something engaging before they start. Um, I think that starts before you even get in the room. So my room is set up weird. I don't want to look like any other classroom. I have a logo for my classroom that's on my outside door. I treat the space like a place that's supposed to feel good, not like a prison. And so I want them to be able to engage before they even get into the classroom. They're already their minds are already firing. I often have a video playing at the beginning. My entrepreneurs have reflection books. They always start with what's on their mind because entrepreneurship is all about solving problems. And I try to come back to that by the end of the class. So class in the middle two sections can be almost anything. But at some point, I want to be talking about how they're engaging with it and asking them questions. Like for example, when I take roll, I'll ask them questions, not to say, "Are you here or not?" And I want to go back to that by the time we end, so there's actually communication happening when the bell rings. That's not just work time. So if I give them work time, I'll try to make it not the last bit of class. And so I'll come back
Gotcha.
to whatever engaging questions there are and have them speaking to the whole class.
Okay. So you were talking about having a video playing. Is that something that's linked to what you're talking about that day, or just kind of something in the background?
No, it's always linked. So if it's music, then there's something about the music that's if I'm in entrepreneurship. That's a new take on how they're approaching that song. So if I have someone covering a song in an interesting way, what's unique about that?
Hmm.
Or there's a video about a teenager who started his own charity when he had a problem with his legs, and how does that relate to what we're doing in our life? So something that relates to the topic,
Yeah,
so we can actually have a conversation about it.
that's
Usually, we'll
awesome.
try to have it playing before the bell rings, so that they have something to be interested in.
So it's starting like in that passing period. You have things going on. So while they're coming in, it's this built-in procedure. All right, yeah, I know Mr. Barnum's class. We're something's happening, and we're gonna talk about it right when class begins.
Yeah,
And
and
how have
then
you?
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, how have you find like that linking or kind of transferring over to their engagement throughout the rest of class, having that set up that particular way each time?
Ask the question again. I don't know if I understand the question.
So having patterns, do you find that there are particular kinds of activities that you do at the start that tend to lend themselves more towards students feeling more engaged throughout the rest of that, remaining 80 minutes of class?
If the student isn't answering any questions, or if they're not actually physically writing in their reflection book, they're not with me. So if I'm going to have them write down in their reflection journal, for example, on what's going on in their life and what needs to be solved, if their hand's not moving, I can't tell that they're actually thinking. And so I'm going to try to get everyone working on something so I know that they're actually actively engaged. And then you always have people in class who are willing to talk more than others. So
Hmm.
then you just have to, start making connections. And I think my most common technique, I call it a punishment just to be funny, and I joke around a lot with my kids. But if no one answers very quick, I'll just have everyone answer, and then everyone in the room gives me an answer, and it's always
Mm,
fascinating instead of just hoping that someone answers. I'm not very
gotcha.
good at being patient and waiting. So if no one talks, we all talk.
Gotcha. Um, does that happen often, or is it after that first kind of punishment for the term, kids kind of figure it out and
No,
like, okay, I don't want to do that again?
that doesn't solve it. We have everyone talking a lot.
Yeah,
They're still kids. If they
yeah,
can choose to be quiet and safe, they're going to choose to be quiet and safe. The beginning
yeah,
of school year, they don't know each other yet. They don't know if it's a
right,
safe space anyway. I always ask also if there's someone who actually has like a diagnosed anxiety disorder, let me
sure,
know so I'm not like making their lives miserable. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
because there are some people who are more than just shy, and
yes,
it'd be
and
it'd be harmful for them to be forced to participate.
yeah. That's awesome. I love that kind of perspective of understanding all of our students are at different places. And yeah, we would like them all to kind of, I guess, play along with us and get involved, but being sensitive towards different learning strategies. So leading in, so you have your beginning part of class, kind of this first like 15, getting them in, having reflections, talking about whatever the video or the music was throughout class. How do you come back to that? Because you said that like the end of class isn't for working on stuff. That's kind of like the middle beef of it. So what's at the end?
I think it's as blatant as having an attention prompt, and I have this. I hate attention prompts. I really just don't like them. But I was given one by some professor, and it's back on me in 5 4 3 2 1 0. And I just feel it's really humanistic. It gives them a second to finish whatever they're doing without saying everyone be quiet this second. And I'll usually use that mentality of like, hey, 1 minute warning, finish up what you're working on. 10 seconds, I want to hear what you're doing, and then actively listen to what they have to say. I try to avoid asking questions that have a right answer. I try to avoid
Hmm.
making it so that there's pressure. I'm not trying to give them a quiz. I'm not trying to check for understanding. I'm just wanting to see what their mind's doing, and so it has to be something they can answer safely, no matter what's going through their mind, even if they're not
Hmm.
quite sure how the material works yet.
Okay. Do you have an example of a question kind of like that that's like, not a right answer. I want to know what you're thinking.
Basically, anytime you use the word opinion, and like, I mean, that's there can't be a wrong opinion, and so what's easy and what's hard, what are you liking, what are you not liking, where are you taking this topic, what is feeling like it connects to you, what doesn't feel like it connects to you, any kind of just opinion reflective moment. It
Okay.
can be as simple as what's not making sense to you, but then they have to admit that they don't know something, and so that's
Hmm.
scary again.
Yeah.
So
Can be scary.
just trying to avoid there being a answer C is the right answer.
Gotcha. Or what does my teacher want the
Well,
answer to be?
yeah,
And so I imagine a lot of that safety that you're talking about is probably ingrained in the way that you operate
I hope so.
with your classroom. So I'm interested to know more about that because for us, for me especially, I love building relationships with my students and having that connection with them allows them to feel that safety. What are some of the things that you do to help foster those relationships or help kids feel seen?
I think part of it is the fact that I can let them take their projects to a place that they choose for it to go. I like leaving a lot of holes in my instructions. I think as teachers, we have a certain tendency to be very concrete in an ABCD format, do this, then this, then
Mhm.
this. So I want to leave room for them to have to decide what it looks like. Like if I need to know what they're doing, I don't care how many slides their PowerPoint is. I don't need a certain number of words. Um, no offense to the English teachers, but I don't ask for a certain format. Like
Yeah.
I want to hear what they're thinking. I've had students turn in a little sculpture. I've had students write a little story. I've had students just answer the questions. So there's got to be that opportunity for them to kind of answer it the way that makes sense to them and then be okay with that and not chastise them for not thinking like you did. So I'm just trying to make sure that whatever the instructions are, there's still a place for them to show their own version of what that looks like and make sure that I'm okay with that. Whatever
Mm.
they're doing as what they're as long as I need to make sure I word the assignment that the principles that we're approaching are being demonstrated no
Yeah.
matter what they choose to do with them.
Okay.
And
And
I
so do
think
you
the second that they start showing what they like about it, then there's going to be that rapport you're talking about. You're going to be able to talk about
yeah.
it, you know.
Okay. Yeah, so celebrating the things that they're interested in sounds like is kind of the direction like, "Oh, that's I wouldn't have thought of that. I love that you thought of that." And getting them to talk about more of where does this go. I think that lends itself very well towards entrepreneurship. And I imagine as well with any kind of project based thing, no matter what the content area is, if the students, it sounds like from what you're describing, if the students are in charge of kind of selecting what it is they want to present or how they want to present this information they've learned, that celebrating that pathway is kind of the best way to get them to
Right.
show their best selves.
Exactly. I think, for example, if you take any class that has to do some kind of report, I always find it fascinating the ways that some teachers ask for the report to be turned in, because the most
Mm.
efficient way would be like a spreadsheet. But I'm a business teacher, so
Yeah.
if I want to know that they researched a country, spreadsheets are designed to organize data, have a list of country names and what are the populations and what spreadsheets make sense. But it's the least used tool by teachers because most teachers, well, not most, it's one of the more rarely used programs out there is a
Right.
spreadsheet. So they start assigning PowerPoints and written work when it's actually not the most efficient way to express what they found out.
Hmm.
And it's just what we're used to doing. We're used to asking for a report or used to asking for a slideshow, where it's rarely that efficient.
So, what are some of the ways that students are turning in these projects to you in terms of their presentation?
Um, this wall over there is my some of them. So the football helmet over there, the shoes taped to the wall, the flag hanging there, those all have and then also that sticker door is all
Yeah.
autobiographical things that students have turned in or have done. Um, it just depends
Hmm.
on. what they're trying to talk about. The Nike shoes, a kid wanted to point out that Nike made a lot of mistakes and did a lot of really cool things. So he turned in two shoes, one that was painted and customized horribly, and one that was really cool looking. And
Hmm.
so we glued those to the wall as being a cool example of how to think. In all honesty, we get a lot of people who, for the last 12 years, have been told how to get the A. It's really
Yeah.
hard to break them of that habit. They're very indoctrinated on following instructions, and it's hard to break them out of that habit.
Yeah. It's true. I don't know if it's a little bit different for your content area in terms of many entrepreneurs. I don't know if this is controversial. Probably don't have to go to university to be
That's a big topic.
successful.
That's a
So,
popular.
um, but I find that the majority of the students that come through my classroom, because they're interested in the medical field, oftentimes they do have to walk through university
Right.
doors to get to whatever their career is, which isn't always the same with any career. And so, yeah, I could see how that would be really challenging. A lot of my students are like, yeah, this is the way you get an A. And to get an A, I need to do this so that I can get to this school, so that I can have this job. Do you find that once you kind of help students understand what entrepreneurship is, they're a little more willing to let go of that rigid, this is the way school works mentality?
Only if they're already not a straight A student. My straight A
Oh,
students have
interesting.
my straight A students, the ones that have always been told good job,
Yeah,
they have enjoyed that. And they've enjoyed knowing how to do that. School is very much set up for a single way of thinking. And if you
yeah,
can follow instructions and memorize, good job. Now to be honest, like a lot of business students go to college. That's a really popular path.
sure.
We hear about the outliers. We hear about the millionaires who didn't, but it's still very statistical that if you're successful, you're more than likely going to school. You're
Yeah.
more than likely the person who's going to college. So I'm not anti-college in any way, but they've been told for 12 years that there's a way to do things. And when I start missing instructions on purpose, there's a lot of anxiety. I actually did my
Mm,
master's thesis on it, so I had to stop wording things the way I did. I used to say things like "do a good job" or "do your best" or "work really hard." I had to replace that with "what can you get done in a week?" Because
okay.
if and when the week hits, they have permission for that to be done. Like I got this done in a week. But if you want to see my best, I've never even seen my best. I know that I'm
Oh,
never even
yeah,
challenged very much at school, and I've got all these seven other classes asking for my attention. That's a really big ask to do my best.
yeah.
But like, what can you get done in a week is a little bit of a safer ask.
Hmm. Yeah. Changing what I mean, you still want them to get to the same goal,
Yeah,
but just changing the way that they perceive the attainability of that goal, I think is really powerful. Um, so as you're going through your lessons, creating this really safe space and awesome opportunities for them to make projects, what does the ending of class look like, and how does that tie into what comes the next class period?
my biggest pet peeve is lining up at the door. That's so fifth grade teacher of me to be bothered by that. But I just
I'm with you.
I don't. Oh,
Yeah.
um. So I just wanted. I'm stuttering. My main interest is that there's something going on at the end of class. That if I
Yeah.
end class 15 minutes early and wait for the bell, then of course they're going to go line up. So that whole engagement thing, I don't have an awesome way of tying in the next class. I can't say that I've got a perfect way of doing that. I just have a
Sure.
scope and sequence that I'm confident with that we're following, and I know that the next subject matter is going to always start reviewing what we covered the next. We're going to cover the next class period what we just did this class period, so I can refer to whatever conversations are happening, and I can bring that up. Hey, someone was talking about this. How'd that go? I often give them small tasks, um, as simple as entrepreneurship is solving things. So if I need them to solve something, hey, go find someone who has a need, solve it, let us know how that went. Then we can talk
Hmm.
about monetization and scalability. It doesn't have to be an actual business to be part of that conversation. So I'll ask them
Gotcha.
to do little tasks like that. I like engaging home. I have some of my like if they're going to take inventory, I'll have them take inventory of their pantries at home instead of just counting what's in their bag. Just trying to engage different parts of their world a little bit.
Okay. So linking, so here's all the stuff that we did. So it sounds like a lot of times, like, here's what we did all today. The last 15 minutes, we're talking about what can you do outside of this classroom that applies what we've learned today.
Yeah, or how's it going with whatever task you've been working on?
Okay, yeah,
Well, how's it going? What are you thinking? Where are you taking it? If I can ask them where they're taking it, that's different than what everyone else is assuming is the right answer. That gives
hmm.
people a little bit more freedom to go crazy.
Yeah. And so I'm trying to think now, applying this because the majority of the teachers that I work with are, the core subjects, math, science, history, not a lot of projects, but things that we could parallel maybe from this last 15 minutes of, I like this. Here's some we learned about World War II, some concepts, some principles, some skills. Maybe your assignment between now and next class could be thinking about what are we looking at in media today and world events today that kind of parallel what we learned about from this concept. Does that sound similar to
Yeah,
what you would do? Like if you transported Calvin into a history class?
right. I think history applies really well because the whole point of learning history is not to repeat it. And so
Yeah.
if you're actually applying what they did right and wrong and where was their mind and how did they end up in that place, I think that's perfect. I think biology is really easy. I think we all are
Yeah.
living in biology. It's surrounding us. We are biology. So whatever choices we're making with our own bodies has biological consequences. And so there's got to be a way to tie in the real world with whatever you're discussing.
Yeah. I
And
think that's a
math
really
is all about problem solving. Math is easy too. Math
sure.
isn't about memorizing anymore. Math is about how can you solve complex issues.
Yeah. Problems. So looking for problems to solve essentially is kind of what it comes down to. Like, here's a
Right.
thing we learned. What's a problem that can be solved by the stuff that we've learned today?
Right.
Would you think that that's, I don't know, in your years of experience, both as a human on planet Earth and as a teacher, that most things could just be boiled down to what's the most efficient way to solve a problem?
I don't like the word efficient just because I think that's
Okay.
over celebrated. I'm ADD to the max, and sometimes efficiency feels bland. But I think
Sure.
there are systems in place that we're just used to using that it's easier and more efficient to keep using them instead of mixing it up a little bit.
Yeah.
The QWERTY keyboard is my favorite example. The keyboard was designed for a physical typewriter that doesn't exist anymore, but we keep using the QWERTY keyboard instead of learning a more efficient placement of the letters, where they were designed for swing arms to not hit each other.
Hmm.
But it's just easier to keep using that instead of to actually find something that doesn't cause carpal tunnel syndrome. But we keep
Hmm.
using a keyboard that's not
Yeah.
designed ergonomically. I mean, no one
Yeah.
walks around like that.
Yeah.
So
That's interesting. That's something I didn't know about the keyboard.
yeah. So
Mhm.
if you have a swing arm on a
Yeah.
letter and the ink comes up, they used to hit each other, so they spread them out so they wouldn't hit each other.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, the more you know. Fun
The more
facts
yeah.
with yeah.
Ring. Yeah.
Cool. So that's kind of like in a nutshell the things that I was most interested in terms of where we're going this month with our theme on the podcast of kind of this back end of class, front end of class, how to tie those in to make it effective. But I'm also just more interested in other things. Where do you see the future of your course going? Because right now it's already pretty big. You're doing some big, huge events each year. What's the next step, or are you dialing it back? You talked a little bit about that at the top of this
Yeah.
episode.
So we being entrepreneur teachers, we think like problem solvers. And we've been noticing things that need to be solved and we keep solving them. So at first we needed to have people take business classes, then they did. We need people to try to start businesses and then they did. Well then now there's this blank space between them trying to start businesses and we know them for 3 more years or 2 more years. And so
Hmm.
we're trying to support them throughout the rest of their teenage life before they go into college. So we're kind of growing this expo that I talked about and it's turning into a charity that we have like free office space and free conference rooms for any kid who needs
Hmm.
mentors to run a business. Instead of waiting for the right teacher to happen to be in front of that student to like hope that they go to a school with a good business program, we just want to support teen entrepreneurs. And so if I
Hmm.
have a space that can be supported through grants and through colleges, that's a safe place for teenagers to get mentorship. It's okay if they're not one of the 30 students who took my class that semester, or if they already
Okay.
did, they need to be supported after that. So I just think as teachers, we also are guilty of getting really used to following instructions and rules. and we have definitions of what is a teacher. And I'm just kind of tired of living in a box, and I'll just do whatever I think is right for the kid. And right now, the
Yeah.
kids need more support than society is offering them. There's no place for them to go. There's nothing to do. We mock them being on their phone, but there's no other really good solutions out there. We've gotten rid of like the '50s malt shop. No one hangs out at the mall anymore. There's no dance club. There's just no place for them to be except for paying for some fast food. And so there just
Hmm.
needs to be something else happening for the kids. So we're just going to try to solve that a little bit.
That's cool. So turning into less of a one time a year event to more of a long term, this is the place where you can come to work out your entrepreneurship goals. So do you have people on, I guess, on the roster from different businesses that are like, these are the mentors for this program
Right.
typically?
Yeah. So we have already we've got 4 or 5 years worth of, we call it proof of concept. We're already been doing it. We have a monthly mentor meeting where we invite about 15 mentors in, and they just talk to all the students one on one, kind of like a speed dating kind of version. And those
Okay.
rotate through the students because every student has a different pain point in this capstone class of how they're running their business. And
Yeah.
then whatever network we have, each member of our network knows that many more people, and they're going to know who can solve this business problem. And there's just this really nice moment when they're a teenager that everyone wants to help them because everyone was a teenager at some point, and every business person compliments what we're doing and wishes that they had it when they were that age. And we just
Yeah.
have really impressive, busy people donating time to the
Wow.
kids. It's really exciting.
That's super exciting. Um, it kind of reminds me. I saw one of your posts a while ago. You were at, was it J Dogs, and you were talking to like one of the employees, one of the kids there. That you were trying to like blast out to your community, like, "Hey, this kid, you need him." So, what was that exchange like? How did that come about?
So he was just, there's just a guy. I thought he was younger than he was. He looked really young. He was in his 20s, actually. He just
Okay.
was a really good employee. You could tell he was sharp. You could tell he was running things. He just made me feel like a valued customer, and he was great. And he was working for, a pretty minimal wage at a low level job. He wasn't even a manager. So I started chatting with him and like, what do you want to do next kind of thing while we were waiting for the hot dog to get done. And he had a bunch of big dreams, and I sent him to a bunch of network people, and he got about 5 or 6 interviews. He chose to stay in the food industry for now, but he's looking at all these other options of how to go into management, and he's looking at
Hmm.
getting back into school um, to kind of further his options. It was really
Awesome.
nice to have someone
Yeah.
see him. I think he was really surprised to be seen. He
Yeah.
didn't he didn't feel like he was used to that.
That's
It was
awesome.
great. It was fun.
Is that one of your like go to things? You're just always looking for
No,
people that are.
no. I just
Yeah.
I have enough business experience, and I teach it enough. When there's that outlier, that really impressive people, my most common thing is just saying good job. That's what I normally do. I'm not normally offering them a business card or jumping on LinkedIn for them,
Sure.
but just letting them know that they're seen and that I know they're doing a good job. That's pretty common.
Yeah.
But I don't normally try to get them job interviews.
Yeah. Cool. But I would imagine, like for our students, kind of bringing it back to home,
Yeah.
seeing them makes a huge difference. Um, do you? What are some of the success stories from your students that have kind of gone through your program over the years? What are they doing now?
Oh man. A lot of them are changing their minds and going to business college. That's like the most common answer that they're
Okay.
going through, and then they're working in various industries, but they got a business degree instead of what they were planning on doing. And I have students who are doing really impressive things and students who are doing some really average things. The impressive things, I just don't like listing them because they were already doing things that were cool
Yeah.
before I met them. So it feels weird to take credit for this big, huge
Sure.
Amazon project. I've got students who are selling an Amazon, like they're selling motorcycles on Amazon, and now they have a motorcycle shop and they're selling a lot of them. So I think that's
Mm,
cool because I told them how to grow the business, but they already had that interest and they were already
yeah.
starting that path. So I don't want to take too much credit, but I think the most
Yeah.
common thing is that they're just seeing options, that there's things you can do, and that business is everything. They don't have to be at a desk chained to a cubicle.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
I think that's a good perspective for our students, regardless of whether they're in an entrepreneurship class or if they're in a science or history class, is that there are options,
Everywhere.
and you can be good at what you love to be good at. And so just finding the right people, having the right people believe in you, makes a huge difference. And that's why we're here. You know,
Right.
that's why I show up at an early hour to get my class ready for teenagers that the majority of which I don't know if they care. Sometimes they
They
do, but
do.
I care.
They tell you that they care.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think my biggest, not biggest. I remember someone saying once that you'll never know until later if you were successful or not. You know when you had a good lesson because the thank yous sound
Yeah.
different. Like my
Yeah.
students all say thank you when they leave my room, but sometimes that you can tell like, oh, they really heard that one, then they meant it, and
Yeah.
they'll tell you like high fives and that you're the best teacher ever and all that kind of thing. You know when you're on. You know when you're
Yeah.
doing it the right way. Teacher students today, I think, are much more practiced at expressing what they think than we were in the '80s. Like
Mm.
I'm old.
Yeah.
I was in high school in the '80s. Like we just, it was cool to act like you were mad about everything. You didn't tell them when
Yeah.
they were doing a good job. You were just mad about everything. But I think students today are a lot better
Yeah.
at expressing themselves.
No. I agree. Or just like expressing themselves, meaning that they don't say anything, and that's their feedback sometimes. Um, yeah, yeah. Okay, I'm trying to think. Is there anything else that we ought to know? Think like nuggets. First 15, last 15. Anything in the middle?
I stop following rules. I think teachers are the solution. I think we all know the way things should work, and I think the framework is there to keep us safe. But I don't think we need to follow the framework and only follow the framework. You know what I mean? I
Yeah,
think there are lots of things we can do because we're smart people who care about kids, or we wouldn't be in this job. And I think if the student is first, I think we can have a lot more creativity. I think we celebrate autonomy as a teacher, but we don't cross. I just lost the word. We don't use cross curricular options very often. Like I'm not coming
yeah,
to the health teachers and talking about marketing or how to come up with a really cool way to work with that teacher. I'm not doing it. And I think a lot of departments are working together now, but I don't think we have a lot of departments working with each other. I don't
no,
think that I don't think that there's a as many cool things happening as there could be.
no.
And
So
we
that
just need to have some power. We just need to re-empower ourselves, I think,
Yeah, it sounds like the next step for educational systems is to link everybody in the building together.
somehow.
Whether you're a skills teacher, a core subject teacher, just bridge the gaps. And I think that could help our students, and you might agree, really have better ownership over their education and more excitement about coming to school because they know, hey, I know in English class why this applies to the thing that I'm actually interested in.
Right.
Because they may not be actually interested in English, but they might be if we had more of those connections.
I mean, it's the second you turn it into communication, everyone gets more interested. We call it
Yeah,
English class, and it's just bad marketing. We've had so many years of bad English teacher jokes on movies that we hear the word English and we
yeah,
think it's supposed to be boring. But like, hey, do you want to get your point across? That's all communication is. I think
yeah.
the biggest, I keep saying biggest, when someone like tries to compliment me and accidentally insults me, that's the funny thing is they'll say like, hey, your class is so great. I wish my class was as easy as yours, or oh, you make your class
Oh,
so fun. Good job. Like I work my butt off. There are so many boring business classes in the world.
yeah,
Like it takes work to make business not boring. And I think that same amount, I think you can make any class engaging. I don't think it's because it's business, but I think it's just being willing to come to where the students are at. It takes work.
yeah. Work and a fair amount of like grit. Like I guess that's kind of the same thing. Like just the we talked about this at the beginning. Just not being afraid to fail at something
Yeah.
and being okay with the first lap not being that fast. Um, and knowing that you figure out, find your racing line, and it gets better as time goes on. Yeah,
I had an amazing professor who I knew was a great teacher, and he made fun of how bad he was the first 3 years of teaching. He made a
Hmm.
joke that those students all deserve a refund. when you have someone who's shiny and awesome admitting that they started off slow, I think it takes a little bit of the pressure off of that whole imposter syndrome that we all deal with. That everyone's a
Yeah,
great teacher and I'm not there yet, kind of thing. The
yeah,
first Everyone's barely making their way through.
yeah. What advice would you have for this is I guess kind of the final thing that I wanted to talk about with you is there's a huge problem with teacher turnover.
Yeah.
I know at our school, like we see a lot of teachers come and go in and out of the building, and I'm sure it's not that different where you are. I know it's pretty similar globally. What would be some of your biggest points of advice for teachers coming into the profession, whether from industry or from pre-service education program, to get past? It's like that 3 year hump. Like if you can make it past 3 years and kind of figure some stuff out, what would you say to those teachers that are kind of teetering and like, I don't know if this is the thing?
I would stop trying to do things the right way and I'd start trying to do things your way. Sorry, the bell system.
Oh,
I'll
you're
say it
good.
again. Instead of trying to fit into this box of what teachers supposed to do, just start doing what you know is right and just do it your way instead of the right way. Just connect with humans and be a good human. And I think it's okay to have fun. If you're not liking your class, neither is your student. If you're
Mm,
bored, so are they. I mean, no one wants to sit and just listen to one person talk the whole time. And
yeah.
if that stand and preach methodology of teaching is in your brain, stop being boring. Have fun.
Yeah. There was a when I was doing my student teaching, some really good advice that I got. Because I would watch different teachers teach and see some cool things that they would do, and then I would try to do those things when I came back to the class that I was teaching. And my mentor was pretty wise and was like, "Hey, I know that thing looked really cool that they did, but it didn't work for you." I was like, "But I mean,
But
what?" Yeah, and he's like, "Well, here's the thing. That teacher that you saw do this thing, they have been doing that for years. That's their thing. I'm not saying you can't steal it, but it's not your thing. So you need to find what is your thing. What is unique about you that will connect you to the students, that will make your lessons fun." And it's taken some time, but like mine, I lean heavy into dad jokes and being awkward and making my kids play games.
yeah,
and and it works because I find that really when you're just trying to amplify what's already inside of you, that's when it becomes authentic and real. But if we try so hard to do what we see other teachers do, and like you said, just follow the rules, do it the right way, this is what we do here, then it's gonna show as well. um
imagine how
yeah.
boring class would be as if at 8:55 there's a school mandate to read a bad joke. I mean, like that that wouldn't work. That'd be
Yeah.
so stupid. But that's the way we act. That's the way we treat teaching. Is like everyone do it this way at this time in this
Mhm.
order, and I don't know.
Yeah, it's very fluid. We forget that our students are people sometimes, um, rather than just these bodies that come in, and I'm supposed to teach this stuff. But it is everything. It has everything to do with knowing who those kids are, what's in their hearts and minds, making them feel seen and heard, and just building our day, our lessons, so that it's designed for them. Is
Right.
kind of my takeaways from this conversation. Is like the beginning of class is very purposeful for what we're doing.
Hey, if you're involved in
Sorry,
mock trials,
You're all right.
please go
it's
to room
lunchtime announcements.
126. Again, you are involved
Any
in
minute now.
mock trial.
Shirley says it
Please
about
go to
three
room
times.
126.
Also, I
Uh,
think it's important to remember that kids are also kids, and
yeah.
whatever else is true, at some point they're going to make a dumb teenage choice. And if you
Yep.
can't handle that, then don't be a teacher because they're going to be dumb.
Yeah.
They're going to be kids. Their frontal cortex isn't there yet.
Yeah. Even like I teach juniors and seniors exclusively this year.
Yep,
Yeah. Yeah. And they do. But just be on that same note, they are kids. I played Simon Says on
they love
like the
it.
first week of class and they got into it.
Yeah,
I have game show buzzers. I give them prizes like scratch and sniff stickers and they eat it up because
it's
like you
fun.
said, we like to have fun. Fun
Yep.
is fun. Awesome. Well, Calvin, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. If somebody
For
was
sure.
interested in what you're doing with your expos, with your business classes, where can they go to learn more or get in
They can
contact
find
with
me on LinkedIn. Calvin Barnum is real easy to find there. There aren't a lot of other Calvin Barnums. We do have some new websites coming out for our charity. Right now it's called Utah Teen Entrepreneur, but we're going to change that to Teen Entrepreneurship. So teenentrepreneurship.org is our new domain. But you can find me on Alpine, and you can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram, and I'm all over the place.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks very much. It's been a pleasure. And we hope you all tune in next time to Think Like a Teacher.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah.